Question 1. Performance analysis shows a significant degradation in the responsiveness of a critical application running in a mixed Linux and Windows environment. The application relies on a shared database and interacts with various network services. The IT administrator is receiving numerous user complaints about slow performance. The administrator suspects that increased logging verbosity on one of the Linux servers might be contributing to the issue, but this is not confirmed. Which of the following actions should the administrator prioritize to address the performance degradation while adhering to best practices for mixed environments? Option A. Disable all logging on the suspected Linux server to eliminate it as a potential factor. Option B. Reboot all application-related services on both Linux and Windows servers to clear any potential temporary issues. Option C. Conduct a thorough analysis of system logs, performance metrics, and network traffic across both Linux and Windows systems to identify the root cause before making any changes. Option D. Immediately reduce the logging verbosity on the suspected Linux server to a default level and monitor performance. Correct answer is D. Immediately reduce the logging verbosity on the suspected Linux server to a default level and monitor performance. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate need for system performance with the long-term implications of data integrity and regulatory compliance. The IT administrator must make a judgment call that could impact user experience, operational efficiency, and potentially expose the organization to regulatory scrutiny if not handled correctly. Careful consideration of the underlying cause of the performance degradation is paramount. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, evidence-based investigation before implementing potentially disruptive changes. By analyzing logs and system metrics, the administrator can identify the root cause of the performance issues. This aligns with the principles of responsible IT management, which emphasize understanding system behavior and making informed decisions. Furthermore, in a mixed environment, understanding the interaction between different operating systems and services is crucial for effective troubleshooting. This methodical approach minimizes the risk of introducing new problems or violating data handling policies. An incorrect approach that involves immediately disabling logging without understanding its impact is professionally unacceptable. This action directly contravenes the principle of maintaining audit trails, which is often a regulatory requirement for data security and incident investigation. Failing to log critical events can lead to an inability to reconstruct past activities, making it impossible to identify the source of security breaches or performance anomalies. This could result in significant regulatory penalties if an audit reveals a lack of proper record keeping. Another incorrect approach, such as randomly rebooting services without a clear hypothesis, is also professionally unsound. This is a brute force method that can disrupt ongoing operations and data processing without addressing the underlying issue. It demonstrates a lack of analytical skill and can lead to data corruption or loss, which has severe operational and potentially legal ramifications. A third incorrect approach, like ignoring the performance alerts altogether, is negligent. This failure to act on critical system indicators can lead to cascading failures, data loss, and significant downtime, impacting business operations and potentially violating service-level agreements, SLAs, or other contractual obligations. It also demonstrates a disregard for system stability and user experience. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured troubleshooting methodology. This includes 1. Clearly defining the problem and its impact. 2. Gathering all relevant data, logs, metrics, user reports. 3. Forming hypotheses about the root cause. 4. Testing hypotheses systematically. 5. Implementing solutions based on confirmed causes. And 6. Verifying the resolution and documenting the process. This approach ensures that decisions are data-driven, minimize risk, and adhere to best practices and regulatory requirements. Question 2. The control framework reveals a critical network service in a mixed environment is unavailable due to a suspected firewall misconfiguration. The immediate business impact is significant, with users unable to access essential resources. The system administrator is under pressure to restore service rapidly. What is the most appropriate course of action to address this situation while adhering to best practices for mixed environments? Option A. Implement a temporary, undocumented workaround that bypasses the firewall to restore service. Option B. Follow the established incident response and change management procedures, involving the security team to diagnose and resolve the issue. Option C. Immediately disable the firewall to restore service, documenting the action retrospectively. Option D. Proceed with a firewall configuration change based on initial assumptions, without consulting the security team. The correct answer is C. Immediately disable the firewall to restore service, documenting the action retrospectively. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the immediate need for system functionality and the long-term security implications of bypassing established security protocols. The pressure to restore service quickly can lead to shortcuts that compromise data integrity and regulatory compliance. Careful judgment is required to balance operational demands with the imperative to maintain a secure and compliant mixed environment. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes adherence to established security policies and regulatory mandates. In mixed environments, especially those subject to specific regulatory frameworks like those governing financial services or healthcare. Though not explicitly stated for this exam, the principle applies to any regulated sector. Maintaining audit trails and ensuring data integrity are paramount. Bypassing security controls, even temporarily, can create vulnerabilities that are difficult to detect and remediate, potentially leading to data breaches, unauthorized access, and significant financial or reputational damage. Adhering to the established change management and incident response procedures ensures that any deviation from standard operating procedures is documented, reviewed, and approved by appropriate stakeholders, thereby mitigating risk and maintaining accountability. This aligns with the principle of least privilege and defense in depth, core tenets of robust security architecture. An incorrect approach that involves immediately disabling the firewall to restore service without proper authorization or documentation is professionally unacceptable. This action directly violates security policies and creates a significant security gap. It bypasses the established risk assessment and mitigation processes, leaving the system exposed to potential threats. From a regulatory perspective, such an action could be construed as negligence, especially if a subsequent security incident occurs. It undermines the integrity of the security posture and can lead to severe penalties if the environment is subject to compliance audits. Another incorrect approach, which is to implement a temporary, undocumented workaround that bypasses the firewall, is also professionally unacceptable. It might seem like a quicker fix. The lack of documentation and formal approval means that this workaround could persist indefinitely, becoming a hidden vulnerability. It creates an invisible security hole that is difficult to track, audit, and secure. This lack of transparency is a direct contravention of good governance and security best practices, and it significantly hinders future troubleshooting and security reviews. It also fails to meet the requirements of many regulatory frameworks that mandate clear documentation of all system configurations and changes. A third incorrect approach, which is to proceed with the firewall configuration change without consulting the security team, is professionally unsound. Mixed environments inherently involve complex interdependencies between different systems and security layers. The security team possesses the specialized knowledge to assess the broader impact of such a change on the overall security posture. Ignoring their expertise and proceeding unilaterally demonstrates a lack of understanding of the collaborative nature of managing secure mixed environments and can lead to unintended consequences that compromise security or disrupt other critical services. This failure to engage relevant stakeholders is a common pitfall that can lead to significant operational and security failures. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Assess the immediate impact and urgency of the service disruption. 2. Consult established incident response procedures and security policies. 3. Engage relevant stakeholders, including the security team and system owners, to understand the root cause and potential solutions. 4. Evaluate proposed solutions against security best practices and regulatory requirements, considering both short-term fixes and long-term remediation. 5. Document all proposed actions, their justifications, and their potential risks. 6. Obtain formal approval for any deviation from standard procedures through the established change management process. 7. Implement the approved solution with meticulous attention to detail and thorough testing. 8. Follow up with post-implementation review and documentation to ensure the issue is fully resolved and security is maintained. Question 3. Analysis of the potential consequences of a planned network protocol upgrade in a mixed Linux and Windows Server environment, specifically concerning data integrity and intersystem communication, requires a structured approach to identify all critical dependencies and potential failure points before deployment. Option A. Rely on vendor documentation alone for the network protocol upgrade, assuming that any compatibility issues with Windows servers will be minor and self-resolving. Option B. Implement the network protocol upgrade immediately across all servers to minimize disruption, addressing any unforeseen issues as they arise through reactive troubleshooting. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment that includes detailed analysis of data flow, protocol compatibility, security implications, and performance metrics across all affected Linux and Windows systems, followed by a phased rollout with rollback capabilities. Option D. Proceed with the network protocol upgrade on a single Linux server first to observe its behavior, and if no immediate issues arise, apply it to the rest of the environment without further extensive testing. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment that includes detailed analysis of data flow, protocol compatibility, security implications, and performance metrics across all affected Linux and Windows systems, followed by a phased rollout with rollback capabilities. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the critical nature of impact assessment in a mixed environment, where the integration of diverse systems and data sources can introduce unforeseen risks. The need to comply with the LPIC 3 Exam 300 Mixed Environment Syllabus, which focuses on practical, real-world application of Linux in enterprise settings, necessitates a thorough understanding of how changes affect system stability, security, and performance. The challenge lies in anticipating potential conflicts between different operating systems, network protocols, and application layers, and in ensuring that any proposed changes do not inadvertently compromise data integrity or availability, which are paramount in any regulated industry. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic and comprehensive evaluation of potential impacts before implementation. This aligns with the principles of responsible system administration and IT governance, which emphasize proactive risk management. By conducting a thorough impact assessment, administrators can identify potential issues, develop mitigation strategies, and ensure that changes are implemented in a controlled and predictable manner. This proactive stance is crucial for maintaining system uptime, security, and compliance with any relevant industry standards or regulations that might govern data handling and system availability in mixed environments. An incorrect approach that fails to adequately assess the impact of a change would represent a significant regulatory and ethical failure. For instance, proceeding with a change without understanding its potential effect on data security could lead to a data breach, violating data protection regulations and ethical obligations to safeguard sensitive information. Similarly, implementing a change without considering its performance implications could result in system downtime, impacting business operations and potentially violating service-level agreements, SLAs, or contractual obligations. Such failures demonstrate a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the potential harm to the organization and its stakeholders. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach to change management. This includes clearly defining the proposed change, identifying all affected systems and components, assessing potential risks and impacts, technical, security, operational, and business, developing a rollback plan, obtaining necessary approvals, and performing post-implementation verification. Professionals should always err on the side of caution, conducting more thorough assessments when uncertainty exists, and prioritizing the stability and security of the mixed environment. Question 4. Cost-benefit analysis shows that a new cloud-based data analytics platform offers significant potential for cost reduction and enhanced reporting capabilities, but its integration requires modifying existing access control policies and potentially altering data anonymization procedures. What is the most professionally responsible next step? Option A. Conduct a thorough impact assessment that evaluates the technical, operational, security, and regulatory implications of the proposed changes, including a review of how the new platform affects data privacy and access control compliance, and develop mitigation strategies for identified risks. Option B. Focus solely on the cost savings identified in the analysis and prioritize the implementation of the reporting enhancements, deferring any detailed review of access control and anonymization changes to a later, less critical phase. Option C. Proceed with the integration of the new platform immediately to realize the cost savings and address any compliance issues that arise after implementation. Option D. Implement the new platform using default security settings and assume that existing anonymization procedures will remain compliant without further review. The correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough impact assessment that evaluates the technical, operational, security, and regulatory implications of the proposed changes, including a review of how the new platform affects data privacy and access control compliance, and develop mitigation strategies for identified risks. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT governance where a proposed technical solution, while offering potential benefits, carries significant risks that must be carefully managed to ensure compliance and operational integrity. The professional challenge lies in balancing the desire for innovation and efficiency with the imperative to adhere to established regulatory frameworks and ethical standards. A thorough impact assessment is crucial to identify and mitigate potential negative consequences before implementation. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a comprehensive and structured evaluation of the proposed changes. This includes not only the technical feasibility and potential benefits, but also a rigorous assessment of the impact on existing systems, data security, user access, and importantly, compliance with relevant regulations. By engaging stakeholders, documenting findings, and developing mitigation strategies, this approach ensures that decisions are informed, risks are understood, and regulatory obligations are met. This aligns with the principles of responsible IT management and due diligence, which are fundamental to maintaining trust and operational stability. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the immediate cost savings without a thorough impact assessment fails to acknowledge the potential for downstream regulatory violations and operational disruptions. This could lead to significant fines, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. For instance, if the proposed solution inadvertently compromises data privacy controls or access management policies, it would directly contravene regulations designed to protect sensitive information. Another incorrect approach that proceeds with implementation based on anecdotal evidence or the perceived urgency of the benefits, without a formal impact assessment, demonstrates a disregard for systematic risk management. This can result in unforeseen system incompatibilities, security vulnerabilities, or non-compliance with data handling requirements, all of which carry substantial regulatory and ethical implications. Such a reactive approach is unprofessional and increases the likelihood of costly remediation efforts. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a phased approach. 1. Initiation and scoping. Clearly define the proposed change and its objectives. 2. Impact assessment. Conduct a comprehensive analysis of technical, operational, security, and regulatory impacts. This should involve relevant subject matter experts and stakeholders. 3. Risk identification and mitigation. Identify potential risks arising from the impact assessment and develop strategies to mitigate them. 4. Decision and planning. Based on the assessment and mitigation strategies, make an informed decision about proceeding, modifying, or rejecting the proposal. Develop a detailed implementation plan if approved. 5. Implementation and monitoring. Execute the plan, monitor for unintended consequences, and adapt as necessary. This structured process ensures that all critical aspects are considered, promoting responsible innovation and adherence to regulatory requirements. Question 5. Strategic planning requires a thorough understanding of the potential consequences of system changes. When considering a significant upgrade to a core network service in a mixed environment, which of the following approaches best ensures operational continuity and regulatory compliance? Option A. Proceed with the upgrade immediately based on the vendor's assurance of improved security and performance, as delaying could expose the organization to current threats. Option B. Prioritize the upgrade based on the perceived urgency of new features, assuming that any disruptions will be minor and manageable post-implementation. Option C. Implement the upgrade on a single, non-critical server first to gauge its performance before rolling it out to the entire network. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment that analyzes dependencies, potential conflicts, and mitigation strategies across all affected systems and business processes. The correct answer is D. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment that analyzes dependencies, potential conflicts, and mitigation strategies across all affected systems and business processes. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge in a mixed environment where a critical system upgrade is planned. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need for enhanced security and performance with the potential for disruption to ongoing business operations and the need to comply with established regulatory frameworks. The mixed environment aspect adds complexity, requiring consideration of diverse operating systems, network protocols, and interdependencies between different components. A hasty or poorly planned upgrade could lead to significant financial losses, reputational damage, and regulatory noncompliance. Careful judgment is required to assess the impact of the upgrade on all facets of the IT infrastructure and business processes. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive impact assessment that meticulously documents the potential effects of the system upgrade across all affected systems, applications, and business processes. This assessment should identify dependencies, potential conflicts, and necessary mitigation strategies. It aligns with best professional practices by prioritizing a proactive, risk-based approach to change management. From a regulatory perspective, particularly within the context of IT governance and operational resilience frameworks often found in regulated industries, though specific regulations are not cited here, the principle is universal. A thorough impact assessment is a foundational requirement for demonstrating due diligence and ensuring business continuity. It allows for informed decision-making, resource allocation, and the development of robust rollback plans, thereby minimizing unforeseen negative consequences and ensuring compliance with any applicable operational standards. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing the upgrade without a formal impact assessment is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It demonstrates a disregard for risk management principles and a lack of due diligence. This approach could lead to unforeseen system failures, data breaches, or service disruptions, potentially violating operational resilience requirements and data protection regulations. It also fails to uphold the ethical responsibility to protect the organization's assets and stakeholders from harm caused by negligence. Prioritizing the upgrade solely based on the vendor's recommendation, without independent verification of its impact on the specific mixed environment, is another failure. While vendor recommendations are valuable, they are often generic and may not account for the unique configurations and interdependencies within an organization's specific IT landscape. This can lead to compatibility issues, performance degradation, or security vulnerabilities that were not anticipated, potentially breaching compliance obligations related to system integrity and security. Focusing only on the perceived benefits of the upgrade, e.g., new features, while neglecting to thoroughly investigate potential negative impacts on existing functionalities and business processes, is a flawed approach. This narrow focus can result in the accidental disabling of critical business operations or the introduction of new security risks. It represents a failure in professional judgment by not adopting a holistic view of the IT ecosystem and its role in supporting business objectives, which is a core tenet of IT governance and responsible system management. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured, risk-aware decision-making process. This begins with clearly defining the scope and objectives of any proposed change. The next critical step is to conduct a thorough impact assessment, considering technical, operational, security, and business implications. This assessment should involve relevant stakeholders from IT and business units. Based on the findings, a risk-benefit analysis should be performed, leading to the development of a detailed implementation plan that includes contingency and rollback strategies. Finally, the decision to proceed should be based on a comprehensive understanding of the potential consequences and a clear mitigation plan for identified risks, ensuring alignment with organizational policies and regulatory expectations. Question 6. Research into the integration of a new intrusion detection system, IDs, within a mixed environment network comprising Linux servers hosting critical financial data and Windows workstations used by the finance department, has revealed potential performance degradation and increased complexity in managing security policies across both platforms. The IT team is tasked with ensuring robust security without compromising the accessibility of financial data or the productivity of the finance department. Option A. Implement the IDS with a phased rollout, starting with monitoring mode on a segment of the network, followed by a limited blocking mode on non-critical systems, and then gradually expanding its scope after thorough performance testing and user feedback, while ensuring clear documentation for policy management across Linux and Windows. Option B. Immediately deploy the IDS in full blocking mode across the entire network to ensure maximum protection against potential threats, accepting any initial performance issues as a necessary trade-off for enhanced security. Option C. Focus solely on strengthening the external firewall rules and disabling all non-essential services on Linux servers to reduce the attack surface, without deploying the IDS or considering its impact on Windows workstations. Option D. Configure the IDS using only the vendor's default security profiles for both Linux and Windows environments, assuming these settings provide adequate protection for all types of financial data. The correct answer is A. Implement the IDS with a phased rollout, starting with monitoring mode on a segment of the network, followed by a limited blocking mode on non-critical systems, and then gradually expanding its scope after thorough performance testing and user feedback, while ensuring clear documentation for policy management across Linux and Windows. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between maintaining system integrity and ensuring user accessibility, particularly when dealing with sensitive data in a mixed environment network. The LPIC 3 Exam 300 Mixed Environment syllabus emphasizes the importance of secure and efficient integration of diverse operating systems and services. The core of the challenge lies in balancing the need for robust security protocols, which can sometimes introduce complexity and performance overhead, with the operational requirements of users who need seamless access to resources. Misjudging this balance can lead to security vulnerabilities or significant user dissatisfaction, impacting productivity and potentially leading to compliance issues if data protection regulations are not adequately met. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, risk-based methodology aligned with established security principles and the specific requirements of a mixed environment. Implementing a phased rollout of security enhancements, coupled with thorough testing and user feedback, ensures that potential disruptions are minimized and that the implemented solutions are effective and practical. This approach demonstrates a commitment to due diligence, proactive problem-solving, and adherence to the spirit of regulatory frameworks that mandate secure data handling and system availability. It reflects a mature understanding of the interconnectedness of security, performance, and user experience in complex IT infrastructures. An incorrect approach that involves immediately disabling all non-essential services without proper assessment would be professionally unacceptable. This would represent a failure to conduct a proper risk assessment, potentially disrupting critical business functions and violating service-level agreements. Ethically, it demonstrates a lack of consideration for the operational impact on users and the organization. Another incorrect approach, such as relying solely on vendor default security settings without customization, would be a failure to exercise professional judgment and due diligence. Default settings are rarely optimal for specific environments and can leave systems vulnerable. This approach neglects the responsibility to tailor security, the unique threat landscape, and operational context of the mixed environment, potentially leading to security breaches and non-compliance with data protection mandates. A third incorrect approach, focusing only on perimeter security while neglecting internal network segmentation and access controls, would be a critical oversight. This demonstrates a limited understanding of modern security paradigms, which recognize the importance of layered defenses and the principle of least privilege. Such a failure could leave sensitive internal data exposed even if the external perimeter is secure, leading to significant regulatory and reputational damage. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, clearly define the problem and its scope within the mixed environment. Second, conduct a comprehensive risk assessment, identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities. Third, research and evaluate potential solutions, considering their impact on security, performance, and user experience. Fourth, develop a phased implementation plan with clear testing and rollback procedures. Fifth, Communicate effectively with stakeholders, including users and management, throughout the process. Finally, continuously monitor and adapt security measures based on evolving threats and operational feedback. Question 7. The assessment process reveals that a company's mixed environment network, comprising both Linux and Windows servers, handles sensitive customer financial data. Current security practices involve separate user account management and access control lists, ACL, for each operating system, with no centralized mechanism for authentication or authorization across the entire network. Company is subject to strict data protection regulations that mandate robust controls over access to personal financial information. Which of the following strategies best addresses the regulatory requirements and enhances the security posture of this mixed environment? Option A. Deploy a new, independent authentication system solely for the Linux servers, while continuing to use Active Directory for Windows servers, with no integration between the two. Option B. Maintain separate user account management for Linux and Windows servers, relying on individual server administrators to enforce access policies for their respective systems. Option C. Implement network-level firewalls and access control lists to restrict access to servers containing customer data, without altering the existing user authentication and authorization mechanisms. Option D. Integrate Linux systems with the existing Windows Active Directory infrastructure, using SSSD or Samba for centralized authentication, and implement group-based authorization policies that are consistently enforced across both platforms. The correct answer is D. Integrate Linux systems with the existing Windows Active Directory infrastructure using SSSD or Samba for centralized authentication, and implement group-based authorization policies that are consistently enforced across both platforms. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge in managing a mixed environment network where sensitive customer data is processed. The core difficulty lies in ensuring that security policies, particularly those related to data access and transmission, are consistently applied and enforced across disparate operating systems and network segments. The presence of both Linux and Windows servers, potentially with different security configurations and patching levels, creates a complex attack surface. The need to comply with data protection regulations, which are stringent regarding the handling of personal information, adds a critical layer of responsibility. Failure to implement robust security measures can lead to data breaches, regulatory penalties, and reputational damage. Careful judgment is required to balance security needs with operational efficiency and to select solutions that are both effective and compliant. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves implementing a centralized authentication and authorization system that can manage user access across both Linux and Windows environments. This typically involves leveraging technologies like Active Directory AD for Windows and integrating Linux systems with AD using tools such as SSSD, System Security Services Daemon, or Samba. By centralizing authentication, administrators can enforce consistent password policies, manage user groups, and grant or revoke access privileges from a single point. Authorization can then be managed through group memberships and access control lists, ACL, applied consistently across both platforms. This approach directly addresses the regulatory requirement for data protection by ensuring that only authorized personnel can access sensitive customer data, regardless of the server operating system. It aligns with best practices for mixed environments by providing a unified management plane for security, reducing the risk of misconfigurations and improving auditability. Incorrect approaches analysis. Maintaining separate, unintegrated authentication and authorization systems for Linux and Windows creates significant security and compliance risks. This approach leads to inconsistent policy enforcement, making it difficult to track who has access to what data. It increases the likelihood of orphaned accounts or overly broad permissions, which are direct violations of data protection principles requiring least privilege. Furthermore, it complicates auditing processes, making it challenging to demonstrate compliance with regulatory requirements. Implementing a solution that only addresses authentication but not granular authorization for data access is insufficient. While knowing who is logging in is important, it does not guarantee that users are only accessing the specific data they are permitted to see. This leaves sensitive customer information vulnerable to unauthorized viewing or modification by authenticated users, failing to meet the core tenets of data protection regulations. Relying solely on network-level access controls without robust user-level authentication and authorization is also inadequate. Network segmentation can limit broad access, but it does not prevent an authenticated user on an authorized segment from accessing sensitive data they should not have. This approach fails to provide the necessary granular control over data access, which is a fundamental requirement for protecting customer information. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach this scenario by first identifying the specific data protection regulations applicable to the customer data being handled. This will define the baseline security and access control requirements. Next, they should conduct a thorough inventory of the existing infrastructure, noting the operating systems, network topology, and current security measures in place. The primary objective should be to establish a unified and auditable system for authentication and authorization that spans all relevant systems. This involves evaluating technologies that facilitate cross-platform integration, such as directory services and identity management solutions. The decision-making process should prioritize solutions that offer centralized management, granular control, and comprehensive logging capabilities to facilitate compliance and incident response. Regular security audits and penetration testing should be incorporated to validate the effectiveness of implemented controls. Question 8. Operational review demonstrates that the organization's mixed environment, comprising Windows servers, Linux workstations, and Mac OS laptops, lacks a unified approach to security monitoring and access control, leading to potential compliance gaps. Which of the following strategies best addresses these deficiencies while adhering to U.S. regulatory frameworks for data protection and access management? Option A. Deploy network-level firewalls and intrusion detection systems to segment the network and monitor traffic between different operating system segments. Option B. Focus on hardening individual operating systems with platform-specific security tools and configurations, relying on manual audits for compliance checks. Option C. Implement a centralized security information and event management (SIEM) system for log aggregation and analysis, coupled with a robust identity and access management (IAM) solution for consistent user authentication and authorization across all platforms. Option D. Prioritize the adoption of a single, widely compatible, but less secure authentication protocol for all user access to simplify management. The correct answer is C. Implement a centralized security information and event management (SIEM) system for log aggregation and analysis, coupled with a robust identity and access management (IAM) solution for consistent user authentication and authorization across all platforms. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in mixed environments, ensuring consistent security posture across diverse operating systems and network segments while adhering to regulatory compliance. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for robust security controls with the operational realities of managing heterogeneous systems, where different platforms may have varying native security capabilities and update cycles. Careful judgment is required to select solutions that are both effective and compliant, without introducing undue complexity or operational burden. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a centralized, policy-driven security management strategy. By leveraging a security information and event management (SIEM) system and a robust identity and access management (IAM) solution, the organization can gain visibility into security events across all environments and enforce consistent access controls. This aligns with general principles of good governance and security best practices, which emphasize centralized control and auditing for compliance. Specifically, in a U.S. regulatory context, this approach supports requirements for data protection and access control mandated by regulations like HIPAA for healthcare data or SOX for financial data, by providing mechanisms for logging, monitoring, and access revocation. An incorrect approach that relies solely on individual system hardening without centralized oversight fails to provide a holistic view of the security posture. This can lead to gaps in detection and response, making it difficult to identify and address threats that span multiple systems. From a regulatory perspective, this fragmented approach makes demonstrating compliance with data protection and incident response requirements challenging, as there's no single pane of glass for auditing or reporting. Another incorrect approach that focuses only on network-level segmentation without addressing endpoint security is insufficient. While segmentation can limit the lateral movement of threats, it does not prevent them from compromising individual systems within a segment. This leaves critical data vulnerable if an endpoint is breached. Ethically and regulatorily, this approach would likely fall short of demonstrating due diligence in protecting sensitive information. A further incorrect approach that prioritizes ease of deployment over comprehensive security controls, such as implementing a single, less secure authentication method across all systems, creates significant vulnerabilities. This directly contravenes the principle of least privilege and robust access control, which are fundamental to most data protection regulations. It also increases the risk of unauthorized access and data breaches, leading to potential regulatory penalties and reputational damage. The professional reasoning framework for such situations involves a risk-based assessment. First, identify critical assets and sensitive data. Second, understand the regulatory landscape applicable to the organization's industry and data types. Third, evaluate existing security controls and identify gaps. Fourth, explore solutions that offer centralized management, visibility, and policy enforcement across the mixed environment. Finally, prioritize solutions that demonstrably meet compliance requirements while being operationally sustainable. Question 9. Which approach would be most appropriate for securely integrating a new third-party cloud service into an existing mixed environment network, considering the need to protect sensitive internal data and maintain system integrity? Option A. Immediately integrate the third-party service to leverage its new features, assuming the service provider has adequate security measures in place. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive security audit of the third-party service, define strict data access policies, implement robust authentication and authorization mechanisms, and establish continuous monitoring of the integration points. Option C. Integrate the service with minimal security configurations, relying on existing internal network firewalls to provide protection. Option D. Deploy the service in a segregated network segment and only allow basic data exchange without detailed security validation of the third-party service's capabilities. Correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive security audit of the third-party service, define strict data access policies, implement robust authentication and authorization mechanisms, and establish continuous monitoring of the integration points. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge in managing the security posture of a mixed environment network, specifically concerning the integration of a new, potentially less secure third-party service. The core difficulty lies in balancing the business need for enhanced functionality offered by the third-party service against the imperative to maintain the integrity and confidentiality of internal data and systems. The regulatory framework for this exam, LPIC 3 Exam 300, Mixed Environments, implicitly emphasizes robust security practices and adherence to best practices in system administration, particularly when dealing with interconnections between different network segments or external entities. The challenge is amplified by the need to ensure that the integration does not introduce vulnerabilities that could be exploited, leading to data breaches or service disruptions, which would have significant operational and reputational consequences. The correct approach involves a thorough risk assessment and the implementation of appropriate security controls before and during the integration. This aligns with the principle of security by design and proactive risk management, which are fundamental to maintaining a secure mixed environment. Specifically, it requires understanding the security capabilities of the third-party service, defining clear data flow boundaries, and establishing robust authentication and authorization mechanisms. This proactive stance minimizes the likelihood of security incidents and ensures compliance with general IT security best practices that underpin the LPIC 3 certification scope. An incorrect approach that prioritizes immediate functionality over security would represent a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This could involve bypassing established security protocols or failing to conduct adequate due diligence on the third-party service's security posture. Such actions would violate the implicit expectation of responsible system administration to protect organizational assets and data. Another incorrect approach might be to assume that the third-party service is inherently secure without verification, leading to a false sense of security and potentially exposing the internal network to threats. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to uphold professional standards of care. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk management framework. This includes identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities, assessing their impact, and implementing mitigation strategies. Before integrating any new service, especially from a third party, a comprehensive security review should be conducted. This review should cover the third-party security policies, data handling practices, and any relevant certifications. Furthermore, a phased integration approach with continuous monitoring and testing is crucial to identify and address any emergent security issues promptly. Professionals must prioritize security and compliance, even if it means a slight delay in deployment, to prevent more severe consequences down the line. Question 10. The review process indicates a potential vulnerability in the network architecture, where a critical financial data repository resides on a segment that is not adequately isolated from development and testing environments. The organization operates under a regulatory framework that mandates strict data segregation for financial information. Considering the absolute priority of adhering to this specific regulatory framework, which of the following network security configurations best addresses the identified risk while ensuring compliance? Option A. Rely on the existing network infrastructure's default security settings, assuming that the separation between segments is inherently sufficient for regulatory compliance. Option B. Introduce a virtual private network, VPN, connection between the development environment and the financial data segment to facilitate easier data access for authorized personnel. Option C. Deploy advanced endpoint detection and response EDR, solutions on all servers and workstations within the development and testing environments to monitor for any suspicious activity directed towards the financial data segment. Option D. Implement strict firewall rules and access control lists, ACL, at the network segment boundaries to permit only authorized traffic between the financial data segment and other zones, while denying all other inbound and outbound connections by default. The correct answer is D. Implement strict firewall rules and access control lists, ACL, at the network segment boundaries to permit only authorized traffic between the financial data segment and other zones, while denying all other inbound and outbound connections by default. Explanation. The review process indicates a potential misconfiguration in the network segmentation strategy, specifically concerning the isolation of sensitive data stores from general user access. This scenario is professionally challenging because a failure in network segmentation can lead to unauthorized access, data breaches, and noncompliance with data protection regulations. The requirement for absolute priority in jurisdiction compliance means that any proposed solution must strictly adhere to the specified regulatory framework without deviation. The correct approach involves implementing robust firewall rules and access control lists, ACL, that enforce strict separation between the sensitive data network segment and other network zones. This aligns with best professional practices by minimizing the attack surface and adhering to the principle of least privilege. Specifically, it directly addresses the regulatory requirement to protect sensitive data by preventing unauthorized ingress and egress. This proactive measure ensures that only authorized systems and users can interact with the data, thereby maintaining data integrity and confidentiality as mandated by the relevant regulatory framework. An incorrect approach would be to rely solely on endpoint security software for protection. This fails to address the fundamental network architecture flaw and represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It places undue reliance on individual device security, which can be bypassed or compromised, leaving the sensitive data vulnerable. This approach neglects the network-level controls required by many data protection regulations. Another incorrect approach would be to assume that existing network infrastructure is sufficient without explicit verification and configuration. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to proactively identify and mitigate risks. It is ethically questionable as it prioritizes expediency over security and compliance, potentially exposing the organization to significant liabilities. This approach ignores the responsibility to ensure that the network infrastructure actively supports regulatory mandates for data protection. A third incorrect approach would be to implement network segmentation without proper documentation and auditing. This creates a compliance gap, as regulatory frameworks often require demonstrable evidence of security controls. Without proper documentation, it becomes impossible to prove adherence to security policies and regulatory requirements during an audit, leading to potential penalties. This is an ethical failure, as it undermines transparency and accountability in security practices. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough risk assessment, followed by the design and implementation of layered security controls. This includes network segmentation, access control, encryption, and regular auditing. Professionals must prioritize solutions that demonstrably meet regulatory requirements and align with industry best practices for data protection. Continuous monitoring and periodic reevaluation of security posture are also crucial to adapt to evolving threats and regulatory landscapes. Question 11. Research into a critical security alert indicating potential unauthorized access on a mixed Linux and Windows Server environment reveals unusual network traffic patterns originating from a specific server. The alert is time-sensitive, and immediate action is required to mitigate any ongoing threat. What is the most appropriate initial course of action to take in this mixed environment to balance security and data integrity? Option A. Immediately isolate the suspected server from the network to prevent further unauthorized access or data exfiltration, and then initiate a forensic imaging process of the affected system storage. Option B. Ignore the alert for a short period to gather more contextual information from other network devices before taking any action on the suspected server. Option C. Proceed with a full system reboot of the suspected server to clear any active malicious processes and then scan for malware using the latest antivirus definitions. Option D. Directly access the suspected server and begin deleting any suspicious files or processes identified by the security alert to quickly neutralize the threat. The correct answer is A. Immediately isolate the suspected server from the network to prevent further unauthorized access or data exfiltration, and then initiate a forensic imaging process of the affected system storage. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between maintaining system integrity and the need for rapid incident response. The LPIC 3 Exam 300 Mixed Environment Syllabus emphasizes secure and efficient management of diverse IT infrastructures. In a mixed environment, where different operating systems and network protocols coexist, a security incident can have cascading effects, making swift and accurate diagnosis critical. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need to contain and remediate a potential breach, with the risk of inadvertently destroying forensic evidence or exacerbating the problem through hasty actions. The correct approach, which involves isolating the affected systems, preserving logs, and then performing a controlled analysis, represents best professional practice because it adheres to established incident response methodologies. This methodical process minimizes the risk of data loss or corruption, ensures that evidence remains admissible if legal action is pursued, and allows for a comprehensive understanding of the incident's scope and root cause. This aligns with the principles of responsible system administration and security best practices, which are implicitly governed by general IT governance frameworks and the expectation of due diligence in protecting organizational assets. Incorrect approaches fail to uphold these principles. Immediately rebooting or shutting down systems without proper forensic imaging can overwrite volatile memory, destroying crucial evidence of the intrusion. Attempting to fix the issue by directly modifying live system files without understanding the full impact can further compromise the system or introduce new vulnerabilities. Relying solely on automated tools without human oversight can lead to misinterpretations of data or the overlooking of subtle indicators of compromise. Each of these actions risks violating the implicit duty of care to protect data and systems, potentially leading to regulatory scrutiny if data breaches occur or if investigations are hampered by lost evidence. Professionals should employ a structured incident response framework. This typically involves preparation, identification, containment, eradication, recovery, and lessons learned. In a situation like this, the immediate focus is on identification and containment. This requires a calm, analytical approach, prioritizing evidence preservation and system stability over immediate, potentially destructive, remediation. The decision-making process should involve assessing the potential impact, consulting established incident response plans, and involving relevant stakeholders before taking significant actions. Question 12. System analysis indicates a critical need to integrate a newly developed customer relationship management (CRM) application with an existing, older inventory management system. The inventory system is known to have a less robust security posture and uses a proprietary data format. The organization handles sensitive customer data and is subject to strict data privacy regulations. Which integration strategy best balances security, data integrity, and regulatory compliance for this mixed environment? Option A. Configure a one-way data synchronization from the inventory system to the CRM, assuming the CRM will be the primary source of truth for all inventory-related customer interactions. Option B. Implement a secure middleware layer that acts as an intermediary, handling data transformation, validation, and enforcing security policies between the CRM and the inventory system. Option C. Expose the inventory management system's core functionalities directly to the internet via a web service, allowing the CRM to interact with it remotely. Option D. Establish a direct database-level connection between the CRM and the inventory system, ensuring the CRM application has read and write access to all relevant inventory data tables. The correct answer is B. Implement a secure middleware layer that acts as an intermediary, handling data transformation, validation, and enforcing security policies between the CRM and the inventory system. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in mixed environments where disparate systems need to interoperate securely and efficiently. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for seamless data flow with the imperative to maintain data integrity and prevent unauthorized access, especially when dealing with legacy systems that may have inherent security limitations. The requirement to integrate a new, modern application with an older, potentially less secure system necessitates a thorough understanding of both systems' capabilities and vulnerabilities, as well as the regulatory landscape governing data handling. Careful judgment is required to select an integration method that is both technically feasible and compliant with relevant data protection and security standards. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves implementing a secure middleware layer. This approach represents best professional practice because it acts as an intermediary, abstracting the complexities and potential vulnerabilities of the legacy system from the new application. A well-designed middleware can enforce security policies, perform data transformation and validation, and provide a standardized interface, thereby enhancing data integrity and security. This aligns with regulatory requirements for data protection and system security by creating a controlled environment for data exchange, minimizing direct exposure of the legacy system. It allows for granular control over data access and flow, ensuring that only authorized data is exchanged in a secure format. Incorrect approach is analysis. Direct integration without an intermediary, while seemingly simpler, poses significant regulatory and ethical failures. It exposes the new application directly to the security weaknesses of the legacy system, increasing the risk of data breaches and non-compliance with data protection regulations. This approach fails to implement adequate safeguards for data in transit and at rest, potentially violating principles of data minimization and security by design. Exposing the legacy system directly to the internet, even with basic authentication, is a severe regulatory and ethical failure. This dramatically increases the attack surface, making the legacy system vulnerable to a wide range of cyber threats. It directly contravenes the principle of least privilege and robust security measures mandated by data protection laws, leading to potential data compromise and significant legal repercussions. Implementing a one-way data synchronization without proper validation or error handling is also professionally unacceptable. While it might seem to simplify the integration, it can lead to data corruption or inconsistencies if the legacy system experiences issues or if data formats are not perfectly aligned. This lack of bidirectional control or validation can result in data integrity problems, which in turn can lead to non-compliance with regulations requiring accurate and reliable data. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such integration challenges by first conducting a comprehensive risk assessment of both systems. This assessment should identify potential vulnerabilities, data sensitivity, and regulatory compliance requirements. The next step is to evaluate various integration strategies based on security, scalability, maintainability, and compliance. Prioritizing solutions that enforce security at the integration layer, such as middleware, is crucial. Documentation of the integration process, security controls, and ongoing monitoring procedures is also essential for accountability and future audits. Adhering to a framework that emphasizes security by design and data protection principles throughout the integration lifecycle is paramount. Question 13. The audit findings indicate that a critical network share containing customer financial data has been inadvertently configured with overly permissive access controls, allowing read and write access to all authenticated users on the network. The IT security team needs to implement a solution to rectify this immediately. Which of the following actions best addresses the audit finding and adheres to security best practices and regulatory expectations for data protection? Option A. Disable the network share entirely until a comprehensive review of all network shares can be completed, which may take several weeks. Option B. Grant full administrative access to the network share to the entire IT operations team to ensure rapid troubleshooting and correction. Option C. Document the finding and schedule a review of the access controls for the next quarterly security audit, assuming the risk is currently low. Option D. Implement granular access controls on the network share, granting read and write permissions only to specific, authorized user groups and individuals who have a documented business need for such access. Correct answer is D. Implement granular access controls on the network share, granting read and write permissions only to specific, authorized user groups and individuals who have a documented business need for such access. Explanation. The audit findings indicate a potential compromise of sensitive user data due to an improperly configured network share. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires immediate action to mitigate risk, while also ensuring compliance with established security policies and regulatory requirements. The administrator must balance the urgency of securing the data with the need to implement a solution that is both effective and auditable. The correct approach involves implementing the principle of least privilege by restricting access to the network share to only authorized users and groups. This aligns with best practices for data security and is a fundamental requirement under many data protection regulations, which mandate that access to personal or sensitive data be limited to those with a legitimate business need. By revoking unnecessary permissions and ensuring that only essential personnel can access the share, the administrator directly addresses the audit finding and reduces the attack surface. This proactive measure demonstrates due diligence and a commitment to safeguarding sensitive information, which is a cornerstone of professional responsibility in IT security. An incorrect approach would be to simply disable the network share entirely without further investigation or remediation. While this might temporarily stop unauthorized access, it fails to address the root cause of the misconfiguration and could disrupt legitimate business operations, leading to productivity losses and potential user complaints. Ethically and regulatorily, this reactive measure is insufficient as it does not demonstrate a commitment to understanding and correcting the underlying security flaw. Another incorrect approach would be to grant broad administrative access to the share to a wider group of IT personnel in an attempt to fix it quickly. This directly violates the principle of least privilege and significantly increases the risk of accidental or intentional data exposure. Such an action would be a clear regulatory failure, as it exacerbates the security vulnerability rather than resolving it, and would be considered unprofessional due to the disregard for fundamental security principles. A third incorrect approach would be to ignore the audit finding, assuming the risk is minimal or that it will resolve itself. This is a critical professional and ethical failure. It demonstrates a lack of accountability and a disregard for the organization's security posture and potential regulatory obligations. Ignoring such findings can lead to severe data breaches, significant financial penalties, and reputational damage, all of which are direct consequences of failing to act responsibly. Professionals should approach such situations by first understanding the scope and impact of the finding. This involves identifying the affected data, the nature of the misconfiguration, and the potential risks. The next step is to consult relevant security policies and regulatory frameworks to determine the appropriate remediation steps. Implementing solutions that adhere to the principle of least privilege and are documented thoroughly is crucial. Finally, verification of the remediation and ongoing monitoring are essential to ensure the issue is resolved and does not recur. Question 14. During the evaluation of a mixed Linux and Windows Server environment that handles sensitive customer data, a system administrator identifies that access controls are managed inconsistently across different file shares and applications. Some systems rely on local user accounts and permissions, while others use network-based access lists that are difficult to synchronize. The administrator needs to propose a solution to improve security and compliance. Which of the following approaches best addresses these challenges? Option A. Grant broad administrative privileges to a small group of trusted IT personnel to simplify management and ensure quick access to all systems when needed. Option B. Implement a centralized identity and access management (IAM) solution, such as Active Directory or an equivalent LDAP-based directory service, to manage user identities and enforce consistent access policies across all Linux and Windows systems. Option C. Manually configure and maintain separate access control lists (ACL) for each individual file share and application, ensuring that only authorized users have access to specific resources. Option D. Focus on implementing strong endpoint security on individual servers and rely on user education to prevent unauthorized access to sensitive data. The correct answer is B. Implement a centralized identity and access management (IAM) solution, such as Active Directory or an equivalent LDAP-based directory service, to manage user identities and enforce consistent access policies across all Linux and Windows systems. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in mixed environments, ensuring consistent and secure access control across disparate systems, particularly when dealing with sensitive data. The professional challenge lies in balancing security requirements with user accessibility and operational efficiency, all while adhering to the specific regulatory framework governing the organization's data handling. The LPIC 3 Exam 300 syllabus emphasizes the integration and management of diverse systems, including identity and access management (IAM) solutions. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a centralized and robust IAM solution that can enforce granular access policies across all integrated systems. This aligns with the principle of least privilege and the need for auditable access controls, which are fundamental to regulatory compliance in most jurisdictions concerning data security. By implementing a unified directory service and leveraging its capabilities for authentication and authorization, the organization can maintain a single source of truth for user identities and permissions, thereby reducing the attack surface and improving compliance posture. This proactive and integrated approach is essential for managing complex mixed environments effectively and securely. An incorrect approach that relies on disparate manual access control lists (ACL) across individual systems is professionally unacceptable due to significant regulatory and ethical failures. Such a fragmented approach leads to inconsistencies, increases the risk of unauthorized access, and makes auditing extremely difficult, if not impossible. This directly contravenes regulations that mandate clear accountability and demonstrable control over data access. Furthermore, it creates an environment where accidental or malicious data breaches are more likely, exposing the organization to severe reputational damage and legal repercussions. Another incorrect approach that involves granting broad administrative privileges to a limited number of users without a clear justification or regular review process is also professionally unacceptable. This violates the principle of least privilege, a cornerstone of secure system administration. It creates a high-risk scenario where a compromised administrative account could lead to widespread data compromise. Ethically, it demonstrates a lack of due diligence in protecting sensitive information and fulfilling the organization's duty of care to its stakeholders. Finally, an approach that ignores the need for centralized logging and monitoring of access events across all systems is professionally deficient. Without comprehensive logging, it becomes impossible to detect suspicious activity, investigate security incidents, or provide evidence of compliance during audits. This failure to implement adequate monitoring mechanisms is a direct contravention of many data protection regulations that require organizations to have mechanisms in place to detect and respond to security breaches. Professionals in mixed environments must adopt a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the organization's security policies, regulatory obligations, and the specific technical capabilities of the integrated systems. This involves assessing the risks associated with different access control strategies, prioritizing solutions that offer centralized management and granular control, and ensuring that all implemented solutions are auditable and compliant with relevant laws and guidelines. A proactive, integrated, and policy-driven approach is crucial for maintaining a secure and compliant mixed environment. Question 15. The control framework reveals that a financial services organization is developing new trading algorithms. The development team requires access to historical trading data, which has been anonymized to protect customer privacy. However, the organization operates under strict regulatory guidelines that mandate absolute priority for data security and preventing unauthorized access to any sensitive information, even if anonymized. The development team's current operational needs suggest a preference for a more flexible, less restricted environment to facilitate rapid iteration. What is the most appropriate approach to balance these competing requirements while adhering strictly to the regulatory framework? Option A. Allow the development team to access the production network segment, where the anonymized historical trading data resides, relying solely on the anonymization of the data for protection. Option B. Implement a dedicated, isolated network segment for the development environment with strict, role-based access controls and comprehensive auditing of all data access and modifications. Option C. Configure a broad, general-purpose firewall rule for the development segment that allows access to the anonymized data, assuming the anonymization is sufficient protection. Option D. Utilize only anonymized data and permit the development team to access it from their standard workstations, without any specific network segmentation or enhanced access controls. The correct answer is B. Implement a dedicated, isolated network segment for the development environment with strict, role-based access controls and comprehensive auditing of all data access and modifications. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in mixed environments where disparate security policies and operational needs must be reconciled. The professional challenge lies in balancing the stringent security requirements of a regulated financial service with the operational flexibility needed for a development team working with sensitive, albeit anonymized, data. The risk of data leakage or noncompliance is amplified by the potential for misconfiguration or unauthorized access in a less controlled development environment. Careful judgment is required to implement controls that are both effective and practical. Correct approach analysis. Implementing a dedicated, isolated network segment for the development environment with strict access controls and auditing represents best professional practice. This approach directly addresses the regulatory requirement for data segregation and protection by creating a controlled perimeter. The use of anonymized data, while a good practice, is insufficient on its own to meet the absolute priority of preventing unauthorized access or leakage of potentially re-identifiable information. This method ensures that the development activities, even if they involve sensitive data structures, are contained and monitored, aligning with the spirit and letter of regulatory frameworks that mandate robust data security and access management for financial services. Incorrect approaches analysis. Allowing the development team to access the production network, even with anonymized data, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This bypasses fundamental security principles of least privilege and network segmentation, increasing the attack surface and the risk of accidental data exposure or compromise. It directly contravenes the absolute priority of data protection mandated by financial regulations. Using only anonymized data without network segregation fails to address the potential for re-identification or the inherent risks associated with handling sensitive data structures. Anonymization is a layer of defense. It is not a substitute for robust access controls and network isolation, which are critical for meeting regulatory obligations. This approach is ethically questionable as it relies on a single, potentially fallible, control. Implementing a broad, general-purpose firewall rule for the development segment without granular access controls or auditing is insufficient. While a firewall provides a basic barrier, it does not offer the specific, auditable controls required to demonstrate compliance with regulations that demand detailed oversight of access to sensitive information. This approach lacks the specificity and accountability necessary for a regulated environment. Professional reasoning. Professionals must adopt a risk-based approach, prioritizing regulatory compliance and data security. When faced with conflicting operational needs and security mandates, the decision-making process should involve 1. Identifying all applicable regulations and their specific requirements, e.g., data segregation, access control, auditing. 2. Assessing the risks associated with each potential solution, considering the sensitivity of the data and the operational environment. 3. Designing a solution that demonstrably meets or exceeds regulatory requirements while minimizing operational impact. 4. Documenting the rationale for the chosen solution and the controls implemented. In this case, the absolute priority of regulatory compliance dictates a more stringent approach than simply relying on data anonymization. Question 16. Operational review demonstrates that the organization's mixed environment, comprising on-premises Windows servers, Linux-based application servers, and cloud-based SaaS applications, has disparate and manually managed user access controls. This leads to inconsistent security policies, difficulty in auditing access, and a growing concern about potential unauthorized data access. The IT security team needs to implement a more robust and centralized approach to manage user identities and their permissions across all these platforms. What is the most effective and compliant strategy for managing user access in this mixed environment? Option A. Create separate, unique user accounts and complex password policies for each distinct system, Windows, Linux, SaaS, requiring users to remember and manage multiple credentials. Option B. Grant broad administrative privileges to a small group of IT personnel to simplify the management of user accounts and permissions across all platforms. Option C. Rely primarily on network-level access controls and firewall rules to restrict access to resources, assuming that users will only access systems within their designated network segments. Option D. Implement a federated identity management solution that supports industry-standard protocols like SAML or OAuth, enabling single sign-on and centralized policy enforcement across all on-premises and cloud resources. Correct answer is D. Implement a federated identity management solution that supports industry-standard protocols like SAML or OAuth, enabling single sign-on and centralized policy enforcement across all on-premises and cloud resources. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in mixed environments, ensuring consistent and secure access control across disparate systems while adhering to regulatory mandates. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for operational efficiency with the imperative of robust security and compliance. A hasty or incomplete implementation can lead to significant vulnerabilities and regulatory breaches. The correct approach prioritizes a unified, policy-driven identity and access management (IAM) strategy. This aligns with best practices for mixed environments, where integrating different authentication and authorization mechanisms under a central control plane is crucial for security and manageability. Specifically, leveraging a federated identity solution that supports industry standards like SAML or OAuth allows for single sign-on (SSO) and centralized policy enforcement. This approach ensures that access controls are consistently applied across all integrated systems, regardless of their underlying technology, thereby minimizing the attack surface and simplifying auditing. This is professionally sound, as it directly addresses the need for granular control and auditability, which are often explicit requirements in regulatory frameworks governing data access and privacy. An incorrect approach would be to implement separate, ad hoc access control mechanisms for each system. This creates security silos, making it difficult to monitor who has access to what, and increasing the likelihood of misconfigurations. From a regulatory perspective, this fragmented approach makes demonstrating compliance with access control requirements extremely challenging, as it lacks a centralized audit trail and consistent policy enforcement. Another incorrect approach would be to grant broad administrative privileges to a limited number of users to simplify management. This violates the principle of least privilege, a fundamental security tenet and a common regulatory expectation. Overprivileged users significantly increase the risk of accidental data exposure or malicious activity, as a compromise of one administrative account can have widespread consequences. Finally, relying solely on network-level access controls without robust identity verification is also professionally unsound. While network segmentation is a valuable security layer, it does not provide granular control over individual user actions within systems. In a mixed environment, users often need access to resources across different network segments, necessitating identity-centric security measures. This approach fails to meet the requirements for accountability and non-repudiation, which are critical for regulatory compliance. Professionals should approach such situations by first conducting a thorough inventory of all systems and their current access control mechanisms. This should be followed by a risk assessment to identify critical data and systems. The next step involves designing a unified IAM strategy that leverages appropriate technologies and protocols to enforce consistent policies, adhering to the principle of least privilege, and ensuring comprehensive auditability. Regular review and testing of access controls are also essential to maintain security posture and compliance. Question 17. Regulatory review indicates that a mixed Windows and Linux environment is experiencing inconsistent enforcement of data access policies, leading to potential compliance gaps for sensitive customer information. The IT security team needs to implement a solution that ensures uniform access control and auditability across both operating systems. Which of the following approaches best addresses this regulatory requirement for a mixed environment? Option A. Rely solely on the native access control lists, ACL, and file permissions within each operating system, ensuring they are configured according to documented internal standards. Option B. Implement a centralized identity and access management (IAM) solution that integrates with a security information and event management (SIEM) system to enforce granular access policies and provide unified auditing across Windows and Linux systems. Option C. Focus on implementing immediate ad hoc security patches and updates as new vulnerabilities are discovered, without a comprehensive policy framework. Option D. Deploy network-level security controls, such as firewalls and intrusion prevention systems, to segment the network and restrict access to sensitive data repositories. The correct answer is B. Implement a centralized identity and access management (IAM) solution that integrates with a security information and event management (SIEM) system to enforce granular access policies and provide unified auditing across Windows and Linux systems. Explanation: this scenario presents a common challenge in mixed environments, ensuring consistent application of security policies across diverse operating systems and network segments, particularly when dealing with sensitive data. The professional challenge lies in balancing operational efficiency with robust security and regulatory compliance. The need for a unified approach to access control and data protection is paramount, as disparate policies create vulnerabilities and increase the risk of non-compliance. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a centralized, policy-driven mechanism for managing access control and data integrity by leveraging a security information and event management (SIEM) system integrated with an identity and access management (IAM) solution. The organization can achieve a holistic view of security events and enforce granular access policies consistently across Windows and Linux systems. This aligns with the principles of least privilege and defense in depth, which are fundamental to regulatory frameworks governing data protection and system security. The ability to audit and report on access patterns centrally is crucial for demonstrating compliance with regulations that mandate accountability and transparency in data handling. An incorrect approach that relies solely on native operating system tools for access control is professionally unacceptable. This leads to fragmented security postures, making it difficult to monitor and manage access effectively across different platforms. Such an approach creates significant regulatory and ethical failures. For instance, if a data breach occurs, demonstrating compliance with audit requirements becomes exceedingly difficult, potentially leading to fines and reputational damage. Furthermore, it violates the principle of unified security management, increasing the likelihood of misconfigurations and unauthorized access. Another incorrect approach, focusing only on network-level security controls without addressing endpoint access, is also professionally unsound. While firewalls and intrusion detection systems are vital, they do not provide the granular control over user access to specific files and applications that is often required by regulations. This oversight can lead to insider threats or compromised credentials being exploited to access sensitive data directly on endpoints, bypassing network defenses. The regulatory failure here is the lack of comprehensive data protection measures that extend to the user and application level. Finally, an approach that prioritizes immediate threat mitigation without establishing a long-term, integrated security strategy is a short-sighted and professionally deficient choice. While rapid response is important, it does not address the underlying systemic issues that create vulnerabilities. This reactive stance can lead to a patchwork of security solutions that are difficult to maintain and may not meet long-term compliance obligations. The ethical failure lies in not proactively safeguarding sensitive data and systems, potentially exposing the organization and its stakeholders to undue risk. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough risk assessment, identification of applicable regulatory requirements, and the selection of integrated security solutions that provide centralized management and auditing capabilities. Prioritizing solutions that offer cross-platform compatibility and robust reporting features is essential for maintaining a strong security posture and ensuring ongoing compliance in mixed environments. Question 18. Operational review demonstrates that a company is integrating a legacy on-premises financial system with a cloud-based customer relationship management (CRM) platform. Both systems handle sensitive customer financial data. The integration is intended to provide sales teams with real-time access to customer financial summaries within the CRM. What is the most appropriate technical and procedural approach to ensure regulatory compliance regarding data privacy and security in this mixed environment? Option A. Prohibit all direct data sharing between the legacy financial system and the cloud CRM to avoid any potential data leakage, requiring manual data entry for any information needed by the sales team. Option B. Conduct a detailed data flow analysis to identify all instances where sensitive data will be accessed, processed, or transmitted between the systems. Implement granular access controls based on the principle of least privilege for both systems and the integration layer. Encrypt sensitive data both in transit and at rest, and establish robust auditing and logging mechanisms for all data access and modifications. Option C. Implement a comprehensive network-level firewall configuration that strictly segregates the on-premises and cloud environments, allowing only essential ports and protocols for the integration, and assume that existing individual system security measures are adequate. Option D. Rely on the default security settings of both the legacy financial system and the cloud CRM, assuming that these platforms are inherently secure and compliant with all relevant data protection regulations. The correct answer is B. Conduct a detailed data flow analysis to identify all instances where sensitive data will be accessed, processed, or transmitted between the systems. Implement granular access controls based on the principle of least privilege for both systems and the integration layer. Encrypt sensitive data both in transit and at rest, and establish robust auditing and logging mechanisms for all data access and modifications. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge in ensuring compliance with data privacy regulations within a mixed environment IT infrastructure. The core difficulty lies in the potential for data leakage or unauthorized access when integrating systems that may have different security postures and data handling policies. The organization must balance the operational benefits of integration with the stringent legal requirements for protecting sensitive information. Careful judgment is required to identify and mitigate risks without hindering necessary business operations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive data flow analysis and the implementation of robust access controls and encryption mechanisms tailored to the specific data types and regulatory requirements of the mixed environment. This aligns with the principles of data minimization, purpose limitation, and security by design mandated by data protection laws. By understanding where sensitive data resides, how it moves between systems, and who has access, the organization can implement targeted controls that are both effective and proportionate, thus representing best professional practice. This proactive and detailed approach ensures that the integration process adheres to regulatory mandates for data protection and privacy. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing a blanket denial of all cross-system data access without a thorough risk assessment is an overly restrictive approach that can impede legitimate business functions and is not mandated by regulations. Regulations typically require risk-based controls, not outright prohibition of all data sharing. Relying solely on network-level firewalls to secure data in transit, without considering data at rest or application-level access controls, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach is insufficient as it does not address potential vulnerabilities within the systems themselves or the data once it has reached its destination. Data privacy regulations require a layered security approach that protects data throughout its lifecycle. Assuming that existing security measures for individual systems are sufficient for the integrated environment without re-evaluation is a critical oversight. Integration can introduce new attack vectors and expose data in ways not previously considered. This failure to adapt security to the new operational context can lead to breaches and non-compliance with data protection obligations. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such situations by first conducting a thorough data inventory and mapping data flows across the mixed environment. This should be followed by a risk assessment to identify potential vulnerabilities and the types of sensitive data involved. Based on this analysis, a layered security strategy should be developed, incorporating access controls, encryption, data masking, and auditing mechanisms. Regular reviews and updates to these controls are essential to maintain compliance as the environment evolves. This systematic, risk-based methodology ensures that regulatory requirements are met while enabling operational efficiency. Question 19. The monitoring system demonstrates a critical vulnerability requiring immediate patching. To minimize downtime and ensure continued operation of critical services within the mixed environment, a decision must be made regarding the patching strategy. Which approach best balances operational needs with regulatory compliance and auditability requirements? Option A. Apply the patch to a subset of non-critical systems first, and if successful, proceed with patching production systems without enabling full audit logging to expedite the process. Option B. Inform management of the vulnerability and await further instructions, delaying any patching or mitigation efforts until a comprehensive risk assessment can be completed, even if it means leaving the system exposed for an extended period. Option C. Immediately apply the patch to all affected systems in the production environment without prior testing, and temporarily disable logging on critical servers to reduce the patching overhead. Option D. Implement a temporary, non-disruptive workaround to mitigate the vulnerability immediate impact, ensuring all workaround actions are logged, and then schedule a phased, tested patch deployment during a maintenance window with full audit logging enabled. Correct answer is C. Immediately apply the patch to all affected systems in the production environment without prior testing, and temporarily disable logging on critical servers to reduce the patching overhead. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate need for system stability and performance with the long-term imperative of regulatory compliance and data integrity. The core tension lies in addressing a critical system vulnerability without compromising the audit trail or introducing new compliance risks. Careful judgment is required to select a remediation strategy that is both effective technically and defensible from a regulatory standpoint. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a controlled, documented, and auditable remediation process. By isolating the affected systems, implementing a temporary workaround that preserves logging, and then applying the patch in a staged, tested manner, the organization minimizes disruption while ensuring that all actions are recorded and can be reviewed by auditors. This aligns with the principles of good governance and data protection, which are fundamental to regulatory frameworks governing mixed environments. The emphasis on maintaining audit logs throughout the process is crucial for demonstrating compliance and accountability. An incorrect approach that involves immediately disabling logging to expedite the patch deployment would represent a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This action directly undermines the ability to track system changes, user actions, and potential security incidents, which are critical components of many regulatory requirements. It creates a blind spot in the audit trail, making it impossible to verify the integrity of the system or to investigate any subsequent issues. Furthermore, it demonstrates a disregard for established security and compliance protocols, potentially exposing the organization to severe penalties and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach, such as applying the patch directly to production without prior testing or rollback planning, introduces unacceptable risk. While seemingly expedient, it bypasses essential validation steps, increasing the likelihood of unintended consequences, system downtime, or data corruption. This lack of due diligence is a failure to adhere to best practices in system administration and change management, and it can lead to regulatory noncompliance if it results in a breach of data integrity or availability requirements. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a risk assessment that considers both technical and compliance implications. This includes understanding the specific regulatory requirements applicable to the mixed environment, evaluating the severity of the vulnerability, and assessing the potential impact of different remediation strategies on system availability, data integrity, and auditability. A structured change management process, including thorough testing, rollback procedures, and comprehensive documentation, is essential. Communication with relevant stakeholders, including compliance officers and security teams, is also critical to ensure alignment and mitigate potential risks. Question 20. Implementation of a comprehensive data protection strategy in a mixed environment requires careful consideration of regulatory obligations. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the principles of data minimization and proportionality when handling sensitive information across diverse operating systems and storage solutions? Option A. Prioritize compliance with the latest data protection regulations by updating security configurations without a thorough review of existing data governance policies or the impact on legacy systems. Option B. Classify data based on its sensitivity and apply granular access controls and encryption policies tailored to each classification level, ensuring robust auditing of all data access and modification activities. Option C. Focus exclusively on strengthening network perimeter defenses and assume that internal data handling practices are inherently compliant if the network is secure. Option D. Implement a uniform, high-strength encryption standard for all data at rest and in transit, irrespective of its classification, to ensure maximum security coverage. The correct answer is B. Classify data based on its sensitivity and apply granular access controls and encryption policies tailored to each classification level, ensuring robust auditing of all data access and modification activities. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in mixed environments, ensuring regulatory compliance across diverse systems and data types while maintaining operational efficiency. The professional challenge lies in balancing the stringent requirements of data protection regulations with the practicalities of integrating and managing systems that may not have been designed with such compliance in mind. Careful judgment is required to identify the most effective and legally sound methods for achieving compliance without introducing undue risk or operational disruption. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the core requirements of data protection regulations by implementing a layered security strategy. This strategy focuses on identifying and classifying sensitive data, applying appropriate access controls and encryption based on that classification, and establishing robust auditing mechanisms. This aligns with the principles of data minimization, purpose limitation, and accountability, which are fundamental to many data protection frameworks. By proactively managing data based on its sensitivity, organizations can demonstrate due diligence and a commitment to protecting personal information, thereby satisfying regulatory expectations. An incorrect approach that involves a blanket, one-size-fits-all encryption policy for all data, regardless of sensitivity, is professionally unacceptable. This fails to adhere to the principle of proportionality, a key tenet in many data protection regulations. Encrypting non-sensitive data incurs unnecessary overhead and can hinder legitimate data processing activities. Furthermore, it may not provide adequate protection for truly sensitive data if the encryption methods are not appropriately tailored or if key management is weak. This approach demonstrates a lack of nuanced understanding of data protection requirements and can lead to inefficient resource allocation and potential compliance gaps. Another incorrect approach, which relies solely on perimeter security without considering internal data handling practices, is also professionally unacceptable. Data protection regulations emphasize the protection of data wherever it resides and however it is processed. Perimeter security alone is insufficient to prevent breaches that may originate from within the organization or through compromised internal systems. This approach neglects the importance of internal controls, access management, and data lifecycle management, all of which are critical for comprehensive data protection and regulatory compliance. A third incorrect approach, focusing only on compliance with the most recent regulatory update without considering existing data governance policies or the implications for legacy systems, is professionally unsound. Regulatory frameworks evolve, and organizations must adapt. However, a piecemeal approach that ignores established policies and the complexities of existing infrastructure can lead to inconsistencies, unintended consequences, and the creation of new compliance risks. Best practice involves integrating new regulatory requirements into a holistic data governance framework that considers the entire data lifecycle and all relevant systems. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough risk assessment, a clear understanding of applicable regulatory requirements, and a phased implementation strategy. Professionals should prioritize identifying sensitive data, understanding its flow, and then applying controls that are proportionate to the risks. Continuous monitoring, regular audits, and ongoing training are essential to maintain compliance in dynamic mixed environments.